Welcome back to another episode of Free the Plant, Free the People. I'm your host, LeVar Eady, and you know every episode is presented by BluRok Farms and BluRok Farms Consulting. So if you need any of your consulting needs met, make sure you reach out to BluRok Farms. We do agriculture, crop planning, financial forecasting, formulations for certain products, cannabis, hemp, and other agricultural products as well. So definitely let us know if you're interested. Also, if you want to get a discount on your medical cannabis card, and that goes for anybody in any state, any legal state rather, I should say, that has a medical program, you can get a card. And all you need to use, go to leafwell.com and use the code BluRockFarm10. Again, that's leafwell.com and use the code BluRockFarm10, and that's BluRockFarm10. All right, let's get in what today's episode is all about. And today we're going to get into and exploring the groundbreaking investments in cannabis and hemp cultivation. We're going to be going from genetics all the way to lighting innovation, as well as terpene science, which is one of my favorite topics. And then we're also going to be diving into the cutting edge research shaping the plant's health, yield, and efficiency. And if you've been a listener of this podcast for a while, you know we're really big on efficiency and being effective. It helps you produce a better product as well as better bottom line for your business. So I want to first bring up a study that was published in 2021 by the Frontiers of Plant Science, which was about genetic mapping and linking gene identities of THC and CBD production. And why that's important. And the writers of that paper was Solomon et al., and that was in 2021, like I stated. The reason why this is important is because the selective breeding and genetic modification that you can do to enhance potency, terpene production, profile, and disease resistance is going to be very important as well in the coming years as a result of climate change and the proliferation of cannabis breeding. I anticipate that's going to increase potential of the type of pests that can affect cannabis, as well as the diseases that can affect it, because it's more in demand and more in production. So having the ability to have cultivars that have been genetically modified in the regards of being disease resistant, pest resistant, climate resistant, tolerant, drought resistance, whatever is going to be needed to allow the plant to survive in more harsh conditions than it was previously requested to do so. Now, I'm big on natural processes, and I'm not big into genetic modifications through scientific selection. I like to see it, me personally, is seeing it through breeding. Proper breeding protocols to guide the genetics in the direction that you want it to be in, and phenohunting to produce those results. So that's kind of how I look at it, but you can still develop a more disease resistance, more climate resistant strains. Like when I first came out here to New Mexico, for instance, the seeds that I had were climatized for California's weather. I met up with a friend of mine, George, who's been out here for a while and had some seeds that he bred specifically to tolerate the outdoor climate of New Mexico, because all of his plants were grown in outdoor situations. He didn't do any indoor at that time for breeding of that particular plant, I believe. And so it was important for me to try to get some of those cultivars that were climatized to this environment to increase my level of success for outdoor. Now, indoor, that's a different scenario. But having it disease resistant and pest resistant still will help in indoor situations where you can accommodate for that, but it's still a potential of being affecting your grow. Now I want to talk specifically about, go a little bit into other areas of genetics in cannabis. And one of the things that I want to talk about specifically is the advancement in cannabis science in CRISP gene editing technology. And so that is more of what I was talking about, as in editing genes in the lab and producing the results you want. Again, I'm not necessarily against it, but I prefer, for me, in the cultivars that I'm selecting for my businesses, that they're develop their pest resistance and their climate resistance through natural breeding selection. By me selecting those cultivars to breed with to provide the qualities that I would like on the end. But this is another way that it can be done. A lot of there was some research done that was done by the University of Minnesota in 2023, so last year, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago, that utilized CRISP's gene editing technology to enhance drought resistance in hemp and making large-scale farming more feasible in arid regions. So we are in an arid region, so that would make it more resistant and more susceptible to being a productive product in our environment based off of these alterations to the genes. But I believe you can still do that, and we do have cultivars here in New Mexico that have bred good quality cannabis cultivars that are suitable for this environment. And so that's what I think we should continue to do. But I do think it needs to be done more in a more scientific manner of still taking genetic testing and sampling of those plants to determine what you're getting, what the genes are representing and that plant has that you're breeding with, and then using that to help guide your breeding decisions. And I'll get a little bit more into that later, because I think for me the interesting aspects of that came in this research paper that I read in regards to terpenes and how we can apply that into selectively breeding for different aromas and tastes and effects that we want from the cannabis plant or hemp plant in particular. Practical applications of gene editing can be used for cultivars, as like I said, of editing the genes to make it thrive in harsh environments. Here, like in New Mexico, that would be dry and hot conditions. Where, let's say, for Georgia, it would be more, you would need humid and still warm conditions with clay, because Georgia has a lot of clay. So maybe a cultivar that's more susceptible to being able to proliferate in soil that's made of clay. So that's ways that you could use it practically to help in practical application. And then this is where I get into, I kind of brought this up earlier about the challenges and ethical considerations in regarding to gene editing. A quick and easy thing to think about is with corn, it being modified, because the majority of the corn that's produced in America is not used for eating. It's used for oil and well, gas in essence. So for fuel, I should say, to be more specific. It's used more for fuel. And that is a result of gene editing. So it just depends on how you feel about it, and I understand both aspects of it, and I'm open to however any of the people in the audience feel about the feeling of it being unethical or not wanting to go that route, and more potentially maybe leaning towards what I'm stating about the natural breeding, but using science to be able to help more guide you in that breeding, but without specifically editing those genes through scientific gene editing technology like CRISPR. And then actually in some places that kind of modification of agricultural products is prohibited. So you have those restraints as well. We'll see how that goes with the changing feelings in agriculture, and I think people are going to probably lean towards it more heavily if we don't get a control on climate change moving forward, because we'll have to if we want to continue to produce the agricultural crops that we'll need at the rate that we'll need to do it at. Because natural breeding and natural selection takes a longer time to be able to do that and to stabilize it. That's the key. Is yeah, you can get it in a particular cultivar, but to have it stabilized that you can make it so that's reproducible in that same cultivar, that takes time. So that's something that we'll have to kind of look and monitor. The next thing that I do want to talk about is lighting innovation and efficiency in that regard. Before we have talked about the switching of HID to LED lights and spectrum tunability of LED lights. There are some newer LED lights that are coming out that are even more efficient, that are even higher tunability to optimize plant growth at various stages. My advice to young cultivators or early cultivators in the space, I wouldn't go forward and spending a lot of money on an LED light with spectrum capability when you haven't mastered the basics, because you're not going to know what spectrum that particular cultivar needs, and you're not going to be able to determine that without more expensive equipment. LED light is more expensive than HID lights. HID stands for high intensity density light. So that would be my advice in that regard. I would get a LED light that has the PPFD that you need for the space that you're looking to go into and grow into. And if you have more specific questions on that, please hit us up with our BluRok Farms Consulting. We can answer those kind of questions to kind of optimize that. Now, if you're a more experienced grower and you have the fundamentals down, you already understand nutrient upload, the kind of medium that you want to work with, the kind of growing style and system that you want to use. If you're familiar with that already, and you have a good understanding of that, and you already have a good understanding of the cultivars that you want to work with, then I would then advise you to then maybe start looking into the lights with spectrum tunability so that you can alter the light spectrums to fit the cultivars that you're growing. But again, that takes a lot of knowledge of understanding that particular cultivar, and that takes time. So that would be my advice on that. There was a study that was published in 2022 in Horticultura, found that LED lighting, full spectrum LED lightings with precise blue and red light ratios increased cannabinoid synthesis by 20% while reducing energy consumption by 30% compared to HPS lights, high pressure sodium lights. So high pressure sodium lights used to be the standard for cultivators prior. They do put out a good they do put out enough light to provide high quality cannabis, potency, and density, but they also do produce a lot of heat, and they also use a lot of energy. That's why LED lights came into play. They're more efficient. They can still produce the same level of spectrum of light that produces high potency and high yields, as the study indicated, while reducing the energy that is used to consume to use that amount of light. 30% is a large chunk, and especially when you think about it from your business perspective, that can save you a lot on your energy, your electricity bill, especially if you have a 5,000 square foot facility and you have 8 rooms with 20 lights per room, depending on the space of the rooms. That's a lot of lights using a lot of energy, and that can be expensive. So without considering the climate concerns that using that much energy, producing that much heat, because then the other aspect of that is if the lights are producing that much heat and you're in a space that you need to control the environment, now you have the room overheated, you have to now pay for AC, which is more energy consumption. With the AC, that might increase the water consumption and the water, the relative humidity into that room, which now you have to pay for a dehumidifier to make sure that that humidity is at the point that you need it to. Now that's more energy that's being used, and more energy that you have to pay for. So these are things that you got to kind of keep in mind to balance it out. And so again, that's why my initial instincts was to say, if you're a newer grower, don't go for the very expensive LED tunable lights, because you're not going to be able to maximize on them, so you're not going to get the full efficiency of using them. There is emerging technology coming out with Fluency and Kavita with, again, spectrum adjustability, LED lights. Neither of these places are paying me, so don't go. I would do your own research based off that. But those are two more the popular name. There's also Science. Um, there's also Spider. There's so many. I can't think off the top of my head right now, but there's tons of them. But really, you need to check to make sure that they're providing the PPFD that you need for your plants to properly produce the yield and potency that you desire outside of what their genetic capacity can hold. The next thing that I do want to talk about, and the last thing that I do want to talk about, is my favorite, or one of my favorite topics, and when it comes to cannabis science, and that is terpene science, and really understanding how that plays with us as humans, how it affects the effect that we are feeling, and just the ability of providing a better quality product. I believe that's going to be hidden in understanding terpenes and the genetics behind the plants that we're growing. So I encourage everybody to read the research, the white papers that were written by Abstracts Lab. I think it's four. I think it's four actually different papers. It's like The Secret of Dank, Tropicana, Understanding Sherbert Baca, but they all are around terpene science. And so what this research paper stated and discovered was that there's a lot of misnomers about aroma and terpenes, especially when it comes to cannabis. We are currently under the auspices of that terpenes is the end-all be-all of the aromas and the flavors that we get when we're consuming cannabis. What we're now finding out through this research paper is that there's smaller, not smaller chemical components in size necessarily, but smaller in quantity, in concentration, or numbers. And some of those smaller in concentrations are these secondary compounds might have a larger effect on the exotic aromas that we get from high quality cannabis, or what we call exotic cannabis. And I want to kind of define that term a little bit. What I'm referring to and what the paper refers to in exotic is having these extreme smells of, let's say, like GMO, that particular cultivar. It has a strong garlic, earthy aroma to it, where with Jack Herrera, it's on the other side, or Tropicana, that's actually even better. Tropicana, it's on that other side of the spectrum if this was a spectrum of smells. This being the earthy side, this being the sweet side, and then everything comes in the middle. So where that study or that research found that some of these smaller concentration components like sulfur-based volatiles, esters, aldehydes, or have and monoterpene, monosequester terpenes might be having a bigger play in that. And the way that they determined that was they took, let's say, oh my God, why is this escaping me right now? The name, and I don't have it in front of me. But let's go with Tropicana cookies because I can't think of the specific cultivar that I really wanted to highlight. But Tropicana cookies. Now, and it came to me. Thank you. Brain works crazy. Sherbert. So, Gelato 44. The breeder of Gelato 44, he picked out of, when he was pheno hunting, he picked 4 cultivars in that set of, I think it was 100, 300 seeds that he pops that were part of this pheno hunting, this breeding project that he was doing. He picked 4 because of the aroma that he was getting on the final products of each of these 4 plants. In essence, if you looked at it, these plants were sisters or siblings of each other because they came from the same lineage. So when you look at them genetically, they had the same genetic markers, and then especially when you looked at their terpene profiles on using chemoluminescence, it showed the same terpene profiles in all 4. But when you took a blind human test and you smelled one, you got a way different smell on, let's say, Gelato 44 than you do on Gelato 14. They were both high quality. They both looked very similar. Again, both from the same lineage. And using chemoluminescence, you see the terpene profiles lining up very similar. But again, to the human nose, it was different. And then when you broke down the chemoluminescence even to a smaller degree, refining the scope at which you're looking at to look at secondary compounds like sulfur-based volatiles, esters, aldehydes, those aspects, you started to see a variation and a difference. And so that was giving some indication that that variation and that difference that you're seeing once you took to the secondary components was an indication that they might have a bigger play in the smells and the differences that you're getting out of these cultivars. So there is a lot more research that needs to be done, but that to me was exciting to see, because if we can validate that claim from that paper to understanding that the secondary components, the sulfur-based volatiles, are more important, then we can start in our breeding processes, start doing that data collection of saying, okay, well, what are the secondary components that we're having in the particular cultivar that I'm looking at? And determining, and after those secondary components are determined to have this effect on the aroma, identifying what effect that they're having. Is it a sweet? Is it a sour? Is it a earthy? Is it whatever it is? So then you can say, I want to breed specifically for a berry forward flavor and aroma. If you know that, let's say, what they did with Tropicana cookies, they believe that 3-MH, which is threadometacarbohexyl acetate, is the component that gives you that citrusy aroma that you get with Tropicana cookies. Where prior, we were thinking that myrcene, limonene, and ocimene were the components that were giving you that. But like I said, they took different cultivars of Tropicana that some had that citrusy smell, some that didn't. And when you broke them all down, they all still had myrcene, limonene, and ocimene in approximately the same ratios. But the ones that had the more citrusy smell had more 3-MHA than the ones that didn't. Which, again, like I said, is some indication. It's not conclusive yet. We have to do, again, a lot more research to determine that. But that is a good indication of that might be the molecule that's doing it. Or that might be one of the molecules. Because we know that it's going to be a combination of many different things. And we know a lot of these molecules, like 3-MH, have variant components that, or I don't want to call them isomers because they're not, but variations of that same chemical component that might give a different citrus component, or maybe altogether different aroma or flavor it. So again, that's important, and as you can tell, I get excited about talking about that specific thing because for me, I can see the potentials of what that information can unlock later. And I do want to close out, for this part of this section particularly, is the environmental variables in determining terpenes and these other secondary components. Temperature, humidity, soil composition, all are very, very important. And I don't want to minimize that with the prior discussion. Some of the practical applications is like the things that I stated of understanding, and actually I didn't even go into that, is once we identify those secondary components too, we can also determine how the things I just mentioned, temperature, humidity, soil composition, affect those secondary components so that we can alter them in different ways to, again, get those components in the percentages that we want. And so that's the practical way that you can kind of use this information once it's determined that this is conclusive. And so, yeah, so that kind of concludes. I know I've been talking a lot today, and I've been giving a lot of information, I felt, detailed information. So I want to make sure that I give you guys the time to kind of sit with that. Please, in the comment section, let me know what you think about that information. What's your views on the terpene kind of secondary component conversation? What's your feelings on lighting? Do you prefer HID, HBS, or well, HID and HBS similar, are the same, and LED? Do you have a spectrum that you believe you like the best, that you think is kind of universal spectrum that works for you? Or do you know of a specific spectrum that you use for a particular cultivar that you have that you would like to share? We would love to have these conversations in the comment section, so please definitely let us know about that. And I really would love to hear what you guys think about gene editing and genetic modifying cannabis, your views on that. Yeah, definitely please share, like the podcast. Again, it's presented by BluRok Farms. We are free the plant, free the people. And we're always looking for more research and ways to integrate the research that we read or learn about with our cultivation practices and running our business more effectively and efficiently. BluRok Farms is specifically committed to regenerative agriculture, so that's why I said about the natural breeding process is more in the lane for my business, but I'm not going to shun anybody that wants to do the other way as well. I believe that there are situations that both can be used viably in a responsible manner, and so. But our practice on our farms and with our businesses, regenerative agriculture, because we want to ensure sustainable soil health, as well as we are actively exploring genetic mapping, which is different than genetic modifying. I want to identify what is in my plants and how it's having an effect on us as the consumers of it, and the cultivation practices that I'm using, how it's having an effect on that as well. So that we can continue to produce high terpene strains, because we have, for our company, all of our strains are high terpene qualified, or else they don't make the cutting block. But with this research, I'm learning that we need to look at now secondary components as well and determine what level of those secondary components we need to have. And then we want to consistently stay providing medically quality cannabis and hemp, even for the recreational patients as well. So continue to rock with BluRok Farms. Again, if you need your medical cannabis card and you want a discount, go to leafwell.com. That's Leaf, L-E-A-F, well, W-E-L-L.com. Use the code BluRokFarm10, B-L-U-R-O-K-F-A-R-M 10, and you'll get 10% off or $10 off. And then for my New Mexico users, use that code and you can get your card for $75. We're trying to get that to expand to other states as well, but right now that specific offer is for New Mexico residents only. And so we're going to wrap this up saying thank you again for listening to another episode of Free the Plant, Free the People. We love you. Smoke some good. Enjoy some cannabis. Have a good day.